Welcome to Scrubbed In, the DVM Journey, the podcast where we dive into the wild, rewarding, and sometimes unpredictable world of becoming a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine. I'm your host, Grace Gaynor, a current second-year veterinary student at Virginia, Maryland College of Veterinary Medicine. Whether you're an aspiring vet, a vet student, or just passionate about animals, this is your backstage pass into becoming a DVM. From classroom to clinic, we're sharing the insights, tips, and real-life experiences to help you thrive on your journey to becoming a vet. So scrub in, and let's get started.
Welcome back to another episode of Scrubbed In. I'm your host, Grace Gaynor, and today I'm thrilled to welcome Samantha Janko, who is a current second-year veterinary student at the Virginia, Maryland College of Veterinary Medicine. Sam, thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Of course. For anyone who doesn't know, Sam is our resident IT person. What is your official title? Is it like IT representative for our class?
Yeah, I think IT support is what it feels like most of the time, but I think it's just, representative, help out fixing all of the AV systems and random people's iPads usually.
Yeah, my gosh. I know you're here to help us with our IT for school, but actually can you help me with my personal iPad? That's so funny.
It happens.
No, we're so appreciative to have you in our class and to have you in that role because we also just got a new IT system and that has been a huge learning curve for all the students and also the teachers. Yeah. So we're very grateful for your assistance.
Happy to help.
Can you start by telling us about your journey to veterinary school?
Yeah, so, it's funny, when I was a kid, I always surrounded myself with animals. Like, a lot of us that come to veterinary school have said in the past, I owned animals, I was inspired by these animals. I definitely had that experience. I had reptiles and rodents. I, did stuff at the zoo. I had dogs, all that. And I think I just never really considered a veterinary medicine career because I thought I would never get in. Like, I always thought it would be too competitive. It kind of seemed like something that was more of a hobby than something that is actually could make me money one day or that I could get into school. So when I started college, and I started college pretty young, I was homeschooled, so I got to start super early. And I went through a lot of career options before I settled on what I eventually did, which was engineering. I was graphic design, I tried architecture, I tried psychology, I tried all of these things, and my mom told me to try this engineering course, and she's like, oh, you're gonna love this, you're a science and math person, you're definitely gonna love this. And I did. There's a lot of really positive things about engineering, and the community of people that want to help others in engineering is very strong, and I always wanted to be engaged with something where I could help others. So I went through and I did my bachelor's, my master's, and my PhD eventually in engineering. Specifically with something called a microgrid, which is an independently operated power system of multiple energy resources together. And I did a lot of work in controls, which is basically, telling those assets how to interact with each other. And what was really neat about microgrids and what still served me and served my soul was that it's a very versatile item. So those types of systems are used all across the world in large grid systems like our own, but also on islands, rural communities, refugee camps, lots of international work, lots of domestic work. And I definitely got my kicks out of, traveling and helping others and saving the world in those ways. And then I also created training programs for the DoD. I created training programs for lots of academic institutions and local communities, how to, have skills in those systems and use those systems. Also a little bit in cybersecurity as well related to those systems. So I did a lot of really cool work. It sounds like it was really fun, and it was. I met a lot of really great people and did a lot of really great things. But I think what happened to me is that I sort of had this progression that was check boxes. It was you go to school, you do your academic thing, you get a job. I got married, I bought a house, I did all of the things that you're supposed to do, and I'm checking off these boxes, and I'm still unhappy. I could do all these great things and go to sleep at night knowing I did something, but I was still not happy with who I was. And so I kind of went back to the idea of, veterinary medicine and being a medical doctor, and I just wanted to put my life together in a way where I could go to bed feeling like I did something, but also going to bed feeling like my soul was full. So I picked up my stuff and I moved across the country to go to school, and it's been exciting and fun ever since. I'm really happy to be in vet med and meet wonderful people like you in vet med, and it's been very heartening to be with you guys in this class.
Yeah, absolutely. We have an incredible group of people, especially because we have so many non-traditional students. So what was your experience applying to vet school while working full-time?
Yeah, that was interesting. I definitely had support of people around me, and that was super helpful.
Right.
I mean, I think a lot of people emphasize how important it is to have a support network. And I definitely had that. I had my husband supporting me and my family from a distance. But, I mean, it was hard. I mean, applying for school, especially feeling like I was starting over from nothing again, like I felt so intimidated. I kind of had no expectations that I would get in. I was kind of like, I got to at least take the leap and try.
For sure.
And I was working full-time remote at that point in Virginia, where I had moved from Arizona, but I was in Virginia at that point. And I think I just had to power through it. I mean, that's,
yeah.
that process is so hard, and you have to do interviews and basically put yourself out there and be like, I am good enough for this field, please take me, and just kind of, leap of faith.
Yeah.
But it was hard.
Yeah, it sounds like because you did engineering, you probably had a lot of the prereqs. Did you have to do any additional classes?
I did, and I think they were I had most of my sciences done. I believe our school also accepted a series of science classes that were acceptable for my past.
Okay.
Like, I think they did accept physics as a replacement for other courses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I did have to take biochem. That was awful.
Yeah.
I hadn't taken organic chemistry in like 10 years.
So
I was
fair.
so done.
Yeah.
I did not like biochem.
Even if you took it just last semester, it was a really difficult class for me, at least.
Yeah,
so
it was.
Feel you on that one. But that's super interesting. I love hearing about your journey, and I love how you took that leap of faith and decided to apply, and look at you now. You got in. So
yes.
it was worth it.
Yes.
And awesome to hear about that support system, too, because I'm sure that really played a big factor.
Yeah. Every other day I was like, honey, I'm not going to get in.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to get in. We can just, let's prep our life for if I don't get in.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it was just like, he was like, you're going to get in.
Yeah.
Everything is fine, because that's his job. As
Yeah,
your support system, that's their job, is to be like, yes.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I love that, because I feel like everyone in your family is like, you're going to get in. And I'm like, wait, but do you actually understand the odds that I'm up against? Like, I know I'm qualified. I know I should get in, but the odds are not in my favor.
Yes.
So
There's so many things outside of your control. I know.
Are you technically an out-of-state student, or are you in-state?
So I am in-state,
Okay.
And it was because I moved a year early. So
Okay.
I had moved trying to become a resident so I could get resident tuition.
Nice.
I didn't apply until after 8 months that I had moved here. So
Okay.
I really risked, like, everything.
That is really wild, but super important, and nice move on your part, because if this is what you want to do, sometimes that can really help you out. I know I'm a Maryland in-state student, so I know that probably helped me get in personally. But
Exactly.
Well, awesome. Thank you for sharing that part of your story. Let's talk about a topic you are interested in, which is AI, or artificial intelligence, in veterinary medicine. How have you personally seen AI being used in veterinary medicine so far?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. I think that's an important topic, but I wanted to pose one back to you, which was just me wanting to understand, as a vet student and somebody who may have spent time in clinics and, just using maybe ChatGPT or other interfaces, what is your perspective of what AI is?
That's such a good question. I think for me personally, in veterinary medicine specifically, I have not really seen it used. The practice that I worked in very consistently in undergrad, and even now during breaks, they are using a bit of an older technology, and they haven't really changed to use AI. I do know of other practices that are obviously starting to incorporate it into their practice, but I haven't really seen it personally used in veterinary medicine, which is why I'm interested to talk to you about it today.
Yep.
But even in academia, it's obviously being used more for revising essays and stuff. I know I've personally used it to revise emails. I've used it to help me write some LinkedIn posts, even helping me with essays for certain applications and stuff like that. So I know I've used it personally, but I've only started using it probably in the past 6 months, when it's kind of started to take off.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a common perspective,
Right.
and I think it makes a lot of sense, just with how public tools have become in the last 2 to 5 years.
Right.
They were really not all that common at all outside of the research space,
Right.
just 5+ years ago. So I think in understanding where it fits into vet med, it's important to understand that there's categories of it. There's AI serves different purposes with different models, right? So I think you can kind of chunk it into 3 groups, which is automation, so trying to get things done that would take us forever. There's identification and pattern seeking, which is like, taking a group of records, for instance, and being like, hey, I could group these things together, or maybe, in my case, things that I'm interested in, medical imaging, being like, hey, yes, this is a tumor, or hey, yes, this is abnormal, or this is normal. And then the last category is, I think, pretty general too, which is like personalization and assistance. Things like ChatGPT, generalized AI sources, tools for you to do web searches and things like that, find information. And those, honestly, there's so many different kinds of models out there that serve each of those purposes that it's kind of hard, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit later, hard to integrate smoothly into a field. It's hard to take all of those ideas and be like, okay, there's one tool that I can use in this way. So as far as what I've seen, there's definitely been automation in terms of using AI to take paper records and put them digitally. That's definitely been something I've seen. And also automating processes for writing SOAP notes. People will record themselves, and AI tools will help them put that into their records so that they don't have to. So they're automating that process for a clinician. For identification and pattern seeking in that bucket, probably epidemiology is a major area where there's a bunch of tabular data about diseases and movement of diseases, and AI finding patterns in those that we wouldn't necessarily find as humans, or it would take us a long time to find those as humans. And then image recognition I mentioned, and diagnosis with medical imaging. And then finding patterns across cases, I think, is pretty interesting too. I met a group out in California who was doing something like that, where they had a group of cases, bunch of different data about, their blood work and stuff like that, and being like, okay, I can predict XYZ disease just from having seen the blood work from 10 months ago, which is like, things that we wouldn't recognize immediately as humans. And then personalization, ChatGPT, right? Ways to search the internet that you didn't used to have. So that's kind of what I see as the major areas being investigated for actually medicine as a whole, not just veterinary medicine.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm glad you mentioned the 3 different sectors, because I didn't really understand kind of the division between those different types of AI. Yeah. So I can see how those different aspects will be used possibly in the future of veterinary medicine, which, speaking of which, how do you think AI is being used to improve the different veterinary sectors right now?
Yeah, so I think, in the same way that there's those 3 buckets I made of kinds of AI, I think that you kind of have to think about veterinary practice also in groups, right? There's clinical medicine where you are seeing active patients. There is research that's happening where people are getting grants or, finding other funding mechanisms and then putting together cohorts of animals. And then there's academia where you're teaching the next generation, right? There's these groups of things. And government kind of spans across all of them and fits in different ways. But for the clinician, I think sorting through records, finding patterns across your clientele is definitely a way that AI is going to be used to improve that sector. But also, that medical imaging diagnosis part is huge. And services are starting to be provided by larger groups of larger organizations to say, hey, if you want your results quicker, we'll still have them reviewed for you by a specialist, but if you want them quicker, we can run it through the system that's been trained, the AI model has been trained by our specialists. And sometimes that's enough of a value proposition for people to be like, yes, I want to use that in my clinic. For research, obviously, pattern recognition is a thing. And then for academia, I've noticed people are starting to use AI to write practical scenarios, right? As for human medicine, because the dog's not going to talk to you. But they can have like an AI model that creates a person for you that you can actually interact with and be like, oh, hey, the model knows that this person has this ailment, and they can kind of get you there as a student, as if you were talking to a patient, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I wonder how that could be applied. I guess they could give us certain situations. I'm thinking about in our school.
I'm like, well, the dog is not going to talk back to you.
The dog is not going to talk. But this fake dog that we made up is, I guess,
It could be an owner, right? You're
very
talking
true.
to an owner. I can definitely see that coming in the future. And as a student that is struggling to write my own practice problems right now, I seriously would appreciate that. And I think it would be super helpful.
Yeah. And that's really interesting, too, especially about radiographs specifically and diagnostic imaging. I know that in a couple classes we've discussed, and I don't remember the specific scenario that we were looking at, but just taking a measurement of something was almost as good as sending it off to a specialized radiologist. So I can definitely see how AI could be used with radiology or diagnostic imaging in the future.
Yeah.
Which probably will put some people out of a job. I don't know how that's going to work. But, and speaking of which, what do you think are some ethical concerns regarding the use of AI in veterinary medicine?
I think that is a good comment, and your comment about people losing their jobs is valid across multiple sectors right now. Obviously, we're in vet med, but there's discussion right now of software engineers losing their job to AI, which is crazy to me because I was taught as an engineer in school that, like, software engineers, you're always going to have a job, right? Somebody's got to program them. I think actually it's important to think about the idea of not losing jobs, but transitioning job type. And I think that's super important. There's a place for specialists. For instance, if you're a radiologist that's worried you're going to lose your job to AI, your job could involve supervision of those models and making sure that they're accurate and making sure that they are adjusting to changes in other technologies, right? As radiology equipment gets better, AI models have to be retrained, and they have to be able to adapt to that massive amount of data. So I think being flexible with your skill set is important, and having a positive outlook for your job. You're still important, you're still valuable, but you have to consider AI as a tool that is progressing your profession instead of holding back your profession. But as far as ethical concerns, I also think it's really important. People kind of see AI models as presenting them with absolutes, because an AI model really isn't set up to say, I don't know, to a question. It's set up to give you black and white answers, or a value of gray between black and white. But it is set up to give you an answer. And I think it is our job as users of the tool to be like, okay, I understand that this is an output that's based on information, and it can cite that information for me. But I think misunderstanding and misinterpreting outputs is something that people have to take responsibility for and be like, okay, I understand that this is a tool. Just like a Google search is a tool, you have to think critically, especially as clinicians. We'll have to think critically about what's being provided to us, but take it with a grain of salt and be like, okay, yes, I can use this and build on it, but not take it quite at face value. And then something I wanted to mention too that I just read about like a couple of days ago, having come from a research background, which I did from my work in the energy sector, research papers and falsification of outputs is becoming a big problem, because now editors on these peer-reviewed journals aren't able to tell the difference between something that an AI model put together and something that a human put together. And I think that's going to be built on a lot of humans taking responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's super interesting that, and I love everything that you said about using it as a tool, because like you said, as clinicians, we have to think critically, and just like we wouldn't take a blood work and not do an exam, like we need all the pieces to come together, and we need to see the whole picture in order to make a diagnosis or to come up with a treatment plan. So I love how you mentioned using it as a tool, and I completely agree that there are some challenges ahead with trying to decipher what's AI and what's not. I remembered one of our classmates that has a kid actually wrote an essay or something the other day, a few months ago, and he turned it in, and the teacher thought that it was AI, but the kid...
It was really him?
It was really him!
Oh my gosh!
So the teacher could not tell the difference between his writing and AI, and I feel like that's kind of off topic, but...
Well, it's kind of the other side of it,
exactly.
Right? It's like AI is so good it matches a human, but a human needs to also be trusted that they wrote something. Like, I think it goes both ways.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that story. That's funny.
Yeah, I felt really bad. I was like, oh no. I can't imagine what I would have done in that situation as a high schooler, middle schooler, being like, I worked so hard on this, but the teacher thinks it's AI.
Yeah, right.
An unexpected challenge.
Yeah,
right?
I'm kind of glad to be a part of the generation I am.
No, same, absolutely. It makes you grateful for what we had. But speaking of which, what challenges do you think there are in integrating AI into veterinary practices?
Yeah, so I have three ideas about that. One is just ethics and misplaced trust in AI. I think that there are a lot of old school clinicians that might have been hesitant to adopt technologies at this point, right? They might have, maybe it was the adaptation of having cell phones, right, at first, and then maybe having internet-enabled ways for people to contact the clinic, and then it became, now people want access to their records immediately. Do you have a service that lets me do that, right? Like, adapting to these new changes is definitely going to be a challenge. And I think that the key to solving that challenge is just introducing people to it on a level that they're comfortable, not having a salesman come up to you and be like, we could sell you this product, but being more like, what would help you day to day? That'll help people gain trust. There's also an issue with sharing of information. I know that there's definitely people who are concerned that if you talk to an AI model or give an AI model your information, that it's going to be put into the cloud and copied and pasted across many things. And I think that there's a lot of companies out there creating AI models that do thoroughly think through your security, and there's also groups that don't. So I think it's, again, us taking responsibility and understanding what we're implementing. There's really no, security policy for a dog's information, but there is for the owners that own a dog, right? Or and I understand that. So keeping information, secure is important. And then I also think another thing is that people that build AI obviously want to sell it, and I think that's understandable. But those markets are kind of like in their infancy stage right now, so it's kind of like these markets where we don't know how to set these prices, and I think that might affect the access to the technology, which is a bummer, because there's so many different types of clinics out there making all different amounts of money year to year, and whether or not the benefit outweighs the cost for them to implement these technologies while we're in this infancy stage. I think that's really concerning, because I would like this to be something that's as accessible as the internet, but it's really not going to be probably for a while. Yeah. As the market kind of understands what are we going to do with this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that there is a lot of gray area with veterinary medicine and kind of information that we can and cannot share. Obviously, like you said, with the owner, we can't share that, but with the dog, there's no regulations.
Yeah.
But we kind of have to toe the line. What do we think is probably the best bet for that type of information and sharing that? So
I think vet med's kind of in an interesting place, because in human medicine it's even harder to implement and explore these technologies. In vet med, you can kind of be like, okay, well, the dog really doesn't know that his name is attached to this thing.
Very
and if
true.
His last name isn't attached and he's assigned a number, then how could you trace it back to a human being? So we actually can explore ways of using this technology better than in human medicine in some ways.
Very true. Maybe we will be the guinea pigs.
I hope so. And maybe treat the guinea pigs.
Yeah. You're so funny. That was so good.
I'm so tired.
No, that was excellent. I know we've talked about it a little bit, but can you shed a little bit more light on how you think AI will be used in the future of veterinary medicine?
Yeah, so I would like to hope that it becomes a tool that is something we are all comfortable with, in the same way we're comfortable with using a Google search or using the internet now. I hope that there's more established pricing schemes for people to be able to apply it directly to wherever their hospital is at in finances. And I think it's something that's really powerful. It can help us diagnose and treat and find trends in animal health changes. And it's just like, we can expedite all of those processes if we have the help of a new tool. And I think we're in a really exciting time right now. Literally the last 2 to 5 years has been exponential change. Just having access to things like OpenAI's interfaces and stuff like that, it's become very public. People are starting to talk about it more. It's no longer science fiction. It's kind of scary that it's no longer science fiction, but I think there's a lot of exciting things happening that could help a lot of people and help a lot of animals. So I would just like to see it as something that people get really excited about and are comfortable talking about, because the more you talk about it, the more it becomes commonplace. And I'd like to see us getting there first.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm glad we're talking about it today, because I honestly don't know much about it, but I've already learned so much just by you explaining the different sectors and how you have seen it used and how you expect it to be used in the future. So very interesting stuff. I want to shift gears a little bit.
Sure.
And ask you about what you do outside of veterinary school for fun.
What free time?
What free time? What fun?
Do you have free time? I don't. Can you share? Give a
my
girl
fun.
A hint. Yeah, I was like, give a girl a hint.
Going to bed.
Yeah, really. Well, when I can find the free time, I really like to hike. Before I started vet school, I used to like to rock climb when I had time, and now I don't, which is a bummer. But I like to be outside. I like to be with my personal animals and with my family. I like to do programming projects, play video games, I play piano. I love how I list all these things. I'm like, yeah, I've spent exactly 15 minutes on all of these items, and then maybe an hour over break. Like,
that's so great. Listen, the realities of a veterinary student, we got to keep it real.
Yeah, no, and the realness of it is that you find fun in studying because you have no choice.
So true. Oh my gosh.
No choice.
Coletta was talking about that when I interviewed her. She was like, yeah, I make studying fun. I was like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah,
please.
please provide me with some tools because I do not know how to make this fun.
Have you been to that indoor rock climbing gym that they have?
I think the one in Christiansburg.
Yeah.
I have. I've been there, and I've been to the one in Roanoke, and they are great, but they are a drive for me. So I have to like figure out ways to fit it into my day.
So fair.
And I'm also looking for people who like to do outdoor climbing. So if you know anybody, let me know.
Yeah.
I miss it. I would like to do it more. But yeah, we're all tired and busy.
So true. And every free moment we get, at least for me, I try to sleep. So
yeah, that's so fair. Sleeping is probably the hobby I should have listed at the top.
So true.
It's my favorite.
Yeah. I want to throw you a bit of a curveball question, so prepare yourself. It's not really a curveball, but if you could give one piece of advice to either a pre-vet student or someone who was in your position and maybe is considering transitioning their career, what would that advice be?
You know, I think just making it something that you believe is possible for you instead of like living in backup plans, which is something I did for so long. I was like, okay, well, if I don't get in, or in my case in the beginning, if I don't pursue this, I could do this and this and this and this and this. And that's comforting, like it is, but it's also not a positive mindset about it. And I think you have to kind of reframe the way you think about applying for school or taking the step. And I think as long as you are keeping the idea that you are going to get in as a possibility that is open for you, that's like half the battle. Because I find it was a very personal thing for me. I was like, I don't think I'm going to get in. I didn't try in the first place when I was young because I didn't think I'd get in. You just got to take the leap and do it.
Yeah. Great piece of advice. I completely agree. I feel like I kind of faced a similar challenge when I was an undergrad because, at least in my program, they were very honest with us about your chances of getting in are kind of slim.
Yeah.
And kind of looking at all these fresh-eyed freshmen, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and saying, oh, well, all you people, maybe a quarter of you are going to stay on the pre-vet track and a quarter of those people are going to get in. Being really... Which I understand they wanted to be realistic with us, but for me, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be the person that gets cut. I'm not going to make it.
Yeah, they love to emphasize the odds around it, which like I think, but that's what life is about, is balancing realism with idealism. And like I needed a little bit of idealism when I was trying to get into school. I needed the la-di-da support system to be like, you've got this, because I really didn't think I got this.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. We're a little more realists than idealists. At least I am.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, but I'm glad that you finally made it. We both made it.
Yes.
So we're right where we're supposed to be. And it feels good, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
What is one thing you're looking forward to when it comes to working in veterinary medicine?
Oh, that's easy. That's just like caring for animals and caring for the people that love them. That's like what it's all about, is like the everyday impact you can make on a life.
Absolutely.
I look forward to it.
Me too. Amen, sister. We love to serve, and we're going to have so many opportunities to do so. Well, thank you so much for your time, Sam. I've loved chatting with you today. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, probably the best place is LinkedIn. You can just search for my name on there, Samantha Janko. I should pop up. I was hoping I'd have my profile picture with a white coat on, and I really should update it if I haven't. So hopefully you'll see me there in a white coat, but feel free to connect with me.
Yeah.
Happy to talk about whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone who doesn't know, all of the second years at Virginia, Maryland, we just got our white coats, basically almost marking the halfway point in our vet school journey. So that's very exciting. Right before we head into clinics. What clinics do you have this summer?
Oh, I have neurology.
Ooh, I want to take that one so bad.
I was at the top of my list, and I'm so glad I get to have it. I have neurology, I have internal medicine, and I have LAMS. Then I've got 2 externals that I set up, one kind of focusing on this AI trust stuff, public corporate one, and then one at a specialty neurology clinic as well. So I think it's going to be a very packed back-to-back summer, but I am itching to take care of animals. I've been learning about taking care of animals for so long. Let's take care of some animals.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, with that, my name is Grace Gaynor, and I just interviewed Sam Janko, and we are Scrubbing Out.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Scrubbed In, the DVM Journey. Thanks for tuning in and being a part of our community of future vets and animal lovers. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. It helps others find the show and join the conversation. And if you have any questions or topics you'd love to hear about, feel free to leave us a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep scrubbing in, and remember, the journey to becoming a DVM is one step at a time.